Hello and welcome to Hamer Reviews. My name is Christopher Hamer and today I'm comparing two Canon behemoths, the 24-70 2.8 RF lens and the 28-70 f2 RF lens. If you haven't already watched my separate reviews of these two lenses, please do check them out. But this video, I'm just going to have a quick chat about which one I'd choose if I was shooting with an R5 rather than Nikon's system, because this has turned out to be the most surprising part of my rental of this camera gear and my foray into Canon's RF system in a bit more detail. So I rented both of these because I really wanted to see what they were like, because the 28-70 at £3,200 is a serious chunk of cash for an f2 lens. But for £2,000 you could have the 24-70 2.8, which is smaller, lighter, and probably better, right? Yeah, it's not that easy. That £1,000 certainly goes a long way. So to start off with, we've got the 28-70 f2. It weighs 1.4 kilograms, it costs £3,200, has 95mm filters, which are expensive, big, and take up more space. And it is a pretty big lens as well. It's very front heavy when you have it mounted on the R5. It's perhaps a little cumbersome. On the other hand, you have the 24-70, as I said, costs £2,000, has image stabilization built in, something that the 28-70 does not have, has ultra silent autofocus, weighs 900 grams, and balances incredibly well on the R5. But to me, this is a little bit Sophie's choice to a certain extent, and I realise that metaphor might not work, but to me, there's a lot in this, because if I was running and gunning and shooting video especially, I think I'd lean towards the 24-70. You have much more silent autofocus, you can't hear it at all, whereas under some conditions I can hear the focus motor in the 28-70. But more importantly, you have image stabilization built in. And image stabilization means that you can get much better shots, especially with video, in combination with the in-body image stabilization that the R5 has, than you can with the 28-70, just because it's easier to create that sort of nice balance of image stabilization when those two things work together. But if you're a photographer, which do you choose? Well, in all honesty, I found the 28-70 was my biggest surprise. The IQ, the contrast, sharpness, it's like shooting with a prime lens, which I think is what I said in the main review of this. It is an incredibly sharp lens, and it has that look of a prime without being a prime. I have not used a zoom like it before. I feel like the Nikon 24-70 2.8S kind of comes close in terms of giving you that prime feel, but this really does. I don't know whether it's the lack of distortion, which is something I really liked. Even at 28mm, it controls it really well, and throughout the zoom range, it works fantastically. Or if it's just the way this renders images, there's something about it that just looks phenomenal. It does weigh a lot more, and I realise that for some of you, £3,200 is a ton of money to spend on a standard zoom, but that f2 aperture has a place. And I think if you're an event photographer, whether it's weddings or indoor events, the extra money that you're going to spend to get f2 across that zoom range is going to be worth it. You're giving up 4mm on the wide range, which actually for some venues is important. You're going to not be able to get that sort of full venue shot, which you're usually going to need an ultra wide for, but you just don't need to change lenses as much, because this kind of replaces primes to me. If I was shooting with the R5, I think I would use the justification that if I have this body and this lens together, they will cover 90% of an event that I'd shoot. I tend to shoot more on the wide side, so maybe this and a 70 or 200 would have me covered. Ideally, you might want that extra wide angle in your bag just to get that full venue shot if you need it. But overall, this is the lens I'd have on my camera body. I would not bother with primes, because f2 for the most part is fast enough in terms of aperture. Plus, I've been really impressed by the ISO performance of the R5. I would not be scared to shoot this at f2 and 1600 ISO to get great photos. Even at higher apertures, so even at like f5.6, I just found the performance of this lens, it just looked so nice. I would prefer to be using it rather than the 24-70 2.8. So if you're a video shooter, maybe you go with the 24-70 unless you need that aperture. But if you're a still shooter, you do this professionally and you make enough to justify it, I genuinely think that the 28-70 is probably going to be the lens for the R5 if you are an events or wedding photographer. It's just great. So there are my thoughts on it. This weighs a lot more, it's a lot heavier, and mounted on the R5, as I said, it does become a little bit front heavy, especially when zoomed out. But it just, honestly, the images are great. Perhaps a little bit more fatiguing. It's a heavier combination. As I said, 500 grams more than the 24-70, but because you have the in-body image stabilization on the R5, it's just a great combo. If you have the EOS R, I'm not sure I would go with this because having no stabilization probably is going to negate some of the benefits you get from that f2 aperture if you're an events photographer, but it is just lovely. So that's just a few thoughts on those two lenses. Really interesting, and as I said, one of the biggest surprises. I didn't think I was going to like this. I thought the 28-70 was going to be a bit overpriced and a bit pointless, but turns out I was wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? So yeah, I hope you found this little comparison useful. Very interesting lenses, really cool development by Canon. I hope Nikon do the same. That's what I want to say there. And yeah, if you have any questions about it, pop them in the comment section. If you use the 28-70, I'd love to know what you think. Do you regret the choice? Are you really happy with it? Have you moved to the 24-70, or equally have you done the opposite and moved from 24-70 to 28-70? If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, as it really does help, and I do hope I see you again next time. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.